Okay, so we are going to start. Welcome to the AURES Auction Academy, which is a series of webinars all about auctions for renewable energy support. Here is the whole webinar series, and today is your first webinar. I am a researcher at the Technical University of Denmark in the area of energy economics and regulation, and I'm going to give the presentation for the first webinar today. First, a couple of short information about the technical side of the webinar. If you have any technical problems regarding sound or so, please send a direct message to Michael Mintler, who is the host of the meeting, via the chat. And if you have any questions regarding my presentation throughout the webinar, you're very welcome to also post them in the chat, and then I will attend to them towards the end of my presentation. Okay, at today's webinar, I will give an introduction to auctions for renewable support in general, and I will also shortly introduce the AURES project and our work. In the AURES project, I'm responsible for the day-to-day coordination, and I also do research within the project. So let's just start directly with the project. AURES is a coordination and support action under the Horizon 2020 program of the EU. It is a 3-year project, and it started in January this year. We are 8 partners from 7 EU countries, and we consist of 3 universities, 2 consultants, a think tank, and a research council. So a quite diverse field. And we do cooperation with policymakers, market participants, and other stakeholders, which is a very important part of our project. We analyze market and framework conditions for auctions for renewables, look into design elements and also implementation procedures. We evaluate different auction designs and also the alternative to auctions. We identify best practices for implementation procedures of auctions, and we facilitate knowledge sharing between stakeholders and help on concrete implementations. We do all this by means of an interdisciplinary approach, where we apply theoretical analysis, which includes, for example, game theory, and we apply empirical analysis, looking into international experiences of auctions all over the world. And we gather knowledge about these auctions through workshops, interviews with stakeholders, and so on. We also do our own simulations of different auction designs in agent-based models and also energy system-wide models. Moreover, we undertake some auction experiments in the lab. We do all this because we would like to gain knowledge about relevant options for renewable support auctions, and to identify or evaluate the impact of different design choices. We would like to develop some lessons learned and best practices for auctions. And all of these insights, we would, in the end of the project, will consolidate into a policy toolbox, which can hopefully be used by policymakers all over the world. A big part of our project is cooperation, and this can also be seen in our cooperation cases, where we work together with policymakers who are implementing auctions at the moment. And you can see our cooperation partners here, and they are energy ministries in 4 different countries at the moment. And we meet with them, discuss different options, and consult about the implications of different design choices. And these cases they will serve as showcases for further implementations of auctions in other countries as well. So this was very shortly about the project, and now I will turn to the actual topic of the webinar today. Why do we need auctions for renewable support? And when we look all over the world, we see that the auctions actually have emerged as a key policy instrument for many countries in promoting energy, renewable energy, and the energy transition. 60 countries are currently using auctions, as you can see on the map. Why do they use these? We could say current support schemes, which are rather often not based on auctions, face several challenges. For example, how can we attract renewable investment under strong budgetary constraints, which we have seen throughout the last years? How can we ensure a stable and foreseeable investment environment? And for a European context also, how can we comply with the development regarding the EU internal market? And exactly the development regarding the internal market is very much dominated by these new state aid guidelines from last year, which I will shortly present here. They say or state that all the new aid schemes shall be using competitive bidding processes, and they should be competitive in the sense that the budget shall be a binding constraint in the sense that not everyone can receive aid. And this is actually quite a new aspect of policy support in many countries in Europe who currently do not limit access to support schemes in that respect. Currently, we are in a transition period where at least 5% of the planned new renewable capacity should be auctioned, and from 2017 onwards, this should apply for all new aid schemes for renewables. The support level in these auctions should be directly on basis of bids given during the process, or formed as a clearing price without any subsequent negotiations. This is clear from the guidelines. And it allows auctions to be technology specific. For example, to support new technologies, which might be a bit more expensive today, but might have longer-term potentials to achieve diversification, to mitigate network constraints and other physical issues. The state aid guidelines also state some exemptions. Member states may choose to exempt installations of below 1 megawatt from being part of the auction, and also demonstration projects below 6 megawatts. For other installations, member states, if they do not want to include auctions or use auctions, they must demonstrate that only one or a very limited number of projects could be eligible for participating in the auction. A competitive bidding process would lead to higher support levels than other schemes, or it would result in low project realization rates. And this is already showing some of the challenges that we have with auctions and some of the things that we analyze in our project. This is just for reference some other EU legislation documents that are relevant when undertaking auctions. I will not go into detail with them, but you can have a look on your own. So what exactly are auctions for renewable support? Now, I have used the term quite often throughout the first introduction, so let's get a definition. We hear quite often the terms auction and tenders. This is just an attempt to define it a little bit better. We see there is no unanimous definition of these terms. In practice, they are often used interchangeably. We see auctions as a price-based allocation mechanism for the sale or procurement of products. It's price-based, mostly price-based, sometimes only price-based, sometimes there are different factors included. A multi-criteria auction, we say. Then tendering we see as the process of procuring a product via the auction. And we see also that the term tender in practice is most often used when it actually refers to a multi-criteria auction where different factors are used to determine who is winning in the auction. And auctions as a RES support instrument, what can they do? They can help us to first allocate the financial support to the appropriate investors, so finding who should get the support, and then secondly, they can help us to determine the appropriate support level. In this, auctions are not a support scheme by themselves. They always have to be combined with a remuneration type, for example, a premium or a contract for difference. And this graph should illustrate this a little bit. It might be a little bit small to see, but you can see this graph and also an explanation in our report on design elements for auctions on our project homepage. And I know all of you have been on the project homepage to register for this webinar, so you know the link. But let me just give you a short example. For example, you have as an instrument, a support instrument, the contract for difference. And in this, you need to have some kind of price setting mechanism. You can do this either administratively or auction-based. And here we can see that the auctions come in. In this respect, we also see that there are different levels of design elements you can talk about. We call them design elements level 1, where you define the instrument, how do I set price, how do I design, what is the scope of the support instrument. And then design elements level 2 is for us, how do I design the auction? What is my format, my pricing rule, my pre-qualification requirements? And this is exactly the design elements level 2 that we are focusing most upon in this project. So how are we going to design the auction in the optimal way? A typical RES auction looks like this. It is a procurement auction to procure the installation of renewable energy, and typically the best bid is the lowest required support level. Here are a couple of examples. For example, you can have a single item auction as we have in Denmark, for example, a 400 megawatt offshore wind project at a predetermined site. Auctions could also be multi-item technology specific, as we have in Germany, for example, where a total volume of 150 megawatts of photovoltaics is auctioned out in one round, and it contains up to 10 megawatt projects. You could also have a multi-item technology neutral auction, where, as we have in the Netherlands, where an annual commitment budget is determined here of 3.5 billion euros, and then technologies have to compete to get access to this amount of support. A typical process for an auction looks like this. A government agency issues a call for tenders to install a certain capacity. Usually it is the capacity that is auctioned of renewable energy power plants. Then the project developers submit their bids. Then offers are evaluated according to set criteria, as I said, most often the price. They are ordered, and the cheapest bids are successful and are the winners of the auction. The highest bids will not be supported. And then agreements are made with the successful bidders. You could have either a direct purchase power purchase agreement or a concession for support payment. Benefits and challenges of such a procedure. Of course, there are some benefits related to this. We have a price competition among the bidders, as you've just seen. The support levels are determined by market and not administratively set, and there have been lots of studies showing that this might be beneficial. And then there is volume and budget control, which is becoming more and more important for policymakers around the world, with the increasing shares and burden on consumers regarding the support for renewables. Some of the challenges of auctions could be obviously the risk of underfulfilling targets when realization rates are low. If you have a renewable target of 350 megawatts, and you auction out 350 megawatts capacity, and not all of your projects are realized, then of course you will miss out on your renewable target. So there's a risk related to that. Also, the participants of the auction face higher risks than under other support schemes because they are competitive. And these higher risks often favor bigger players, and they also might increase costs. Additionally, there might be unfavorable strategic bidding behaviors that are triggered by the auction, and this might lead to high support costs and some inefficiencies. And this is a new aspect that we have not had before in renewable support. So we will have to deal with these. Just a short note, many of the benefits and challenges actually apply for other support scheme designs as well. For example, you can do volume control by setting caps under premium schemes, and you can also have risks related to other support scheme designs, for example, certificate schemes. So you cannot see auctions isolated, and this is also why we will look into, or we are looking into alternative instruments in the AURES project as well. Let me give you a short overview of the different design elements of renewable auctions. I will not go into detail with all of them. We have described them on our webpage, so you can have a look. I will just show you what should be considered when designing auctions. And also, during the next webinars, we will see more and more of these. As a general aspect, you can say that what should be your selection criteria for the auction? Should it be price only, or do you want to have multi-criteria selecting the winner? What should be your auction format? Are you auctioning a single item or a multi-item, several different projects at the same time which should compete? What should be your auction type? Do you have a sealed bid, or for example, descending clock auction? What should be your pricing rule? Is it a pay-as-bid or a uniform pricing? Do you want to have price limits, a ceiling, or a minimum? And then there could be other general design elements. For example, should there be any seller concentration rules? How about information provision? Should there be a stakeholder dialogue as part of the process? How should the auction be undertaken? Via the internet, in person, or letters? And should there be a secondary market opened up for a secondary market trading the concessions? And then there are some specific auction design elements. For example, what should be the scope? How large should the auction volume be? What exactly should be auctioned? Is it the capacity of renewable installation, or maybe should it be energy-based annual figures? How often do you undertake the auction, and what could be your target achievement safeguards in case of realization rates are not 100%? For example, should the amounts not awarded or not billed, should they enter future auction rounds? Then the support part, you have to choose a remuneration type. For example, a premium, should it be sliding or fixed? How long should the support be paid out? Should there be any remuneration over time? Then, should there be any rules regarding diversity? What should be the technology diversity? Should there be any, or should it be technology neutral? Should there be some rules regarding size diversity, geographical, and most importantly, maybe actor diversity? Who should be able to have access to support, renewable support in the future? Then a lot of auction schemes also contain pre-qualification criteria, either to get access to the auction, or also together with a bid submission. We generally differentiate between qualification of the project, which could have some technical requirements, documentation requirements, or obtained permits and licenses, and then qualification of the project developer, who should maybe have some financial capability requirements, experience with undertaking renewable projects in the area, or could also put some deposits and other guarantees. Then penalties are an important design element for non-compliance or for delay of construction. And there could be other design elements such as local content rules, which of course is a bit problematic in EU and also international. And then deadlines and grace periods. So this is just a big overview of all the different design elements that are to be considered when designing the auction. And today I will just give you a couple of examples, one on the pricing rule and then on diversity and penalties, to show you how we are dealing with these different elements. So let's look at the pricing rule. In general, price determination should be, the mechanism should serve to generate competitive prices, especially when the market clearing price is unknown. So auctions help us to uncover the appropriate support levels. And we do have many different options, or several different options, which are different for single item auctions and multi-item auctions. In single item auctions, we could, for example, have the first price rule, where the bid is relevant for an investor. It is relevant. What you bid is what you get. So the winning bid determines the price. Another rule for a single item auction could be a second price rule, where the winning bid has no direct impact on the award price that the winner gets. The winning bidder is the one who gives the best bid, but the price is determined by the second best bid. Here I'm just going to show you what the different design elements, design options are. I'm not going to go into detail with the benefits and challenges behind this. We will have further webinars who go into detail and explain more about this. For the multi-item auctions, you have, for example, the pay as bid, which is corresponding to the first price auction all winners receive their own bid as award prize. In contrast to that, you can have a uniform prize where all winners receive the same prize, which is the market clearing price. And the market clearing price could be formed based on the highest accepted bid or the lowest rejected bid, similar to the first and second prize differentiation, as I just said. A third rule could be the victory auction, which is based on the opportunity cost approach. And this is the actual multi-item generalization of the second prize, where you go in and look into what the prices would have been if the winning bidder had not participated in the auction, and then determine the winning or resulting price. So this is just an example to show you pricing rule seems rather simple, but there are actually many different options that should be considered. So you can see more about this on our project homepage, and also we are working on an upcoming report that will go through these in more detail. The second example that I just wanted to show you is penalties and their effects. And here I want to show you the effects it can have on different success criteria. And for our project, we have developed a set of 7 assessment criteria with which we assess auction designs. And you can see the 7 here. I will not go into detail, just show how penalties can affect some of these, effectiveness, static efficiency, and support costs. So we know that there are several auction issues. For example, we need to ensure a high realization rate, we need to secure sufficient competition, and we would like to achieve true cost bids. And when we apply strong or strict non-compliance penalties, we can see the effect is that we get more serious bids. And this ensures a high realization rate because we can be sure that those who win actually would like to build the project. And this, of course, has a positive impact on effectiveness, which we measure as high realization rate. However, penalties can also lead to fewer bids. Some potential participants might be put off by these penalties, and this might impact competition and therewith efficiency of the scheme. Likewise, the bids are probably becoming higher than without penalties, because there is a risk of paying these penalties, which are usually priced in the bid. And this, of course, will affect static efficiency because we cannot see the true costs anymore. And it will also affect support costs because the total amount of support costs will increase with higher bids. The second example that I would like to give is technology as diversification. So if we do not diversify for technologies, we can see that, for example, there might be some impact on these 4 assessment criteria. We look into some issues again. We would like to secure sufficient competition. We also would like to trigger technology development. That could be a policy goal, or ensuring investor diversity. So if you have a technology neutral auction, you have a bigger market. And of course, this will increase competition, and this has a positive impact on efficiency, static efficiency. However, if you have technology neutrality, very mature technologies are competing directly with more immature technologies, and this might lead to a rather short-term focus in the competition and reduce the incentive for further technology development, and this might impact then dynamic efficiency. Also, the stronger competition between technologies might hinder investor diversity, and this might or might not have impacts on local development, because we might see clustering of technologies in certain areas, for example. And also it might impact social political feasibility, because we do see in many countries in Europe at the moment that they are very diverse in terms of technology, so moving over to a neutral scheme might be politically and socially complicated. So this is just a short example of these effects. And you will be able to read more on this topic. We have published 2 reports, one on design elements, which goes through all of the elements that I showed on the table, explains all the options, and also gives some examples of their applications throughout the world. And then also a second report on the assessment criteria and how they relate to each of the different impacts, market effects, and also design elements. And we are also going to hear about this in more detail at our next webinar, which will take place next week at the same time as today. So just as a roundup, what are the experiences so far? We can see that auction results are rather mixed. Yes, often rather low prices could be achieved with the auction, which is one of the major policy targets. However, realization rates are usually well below 100% of the schemes that we've seen so far. And it seems especially difficult to find appropriate penalty levels. We've seen rather many countries experimenting with different levels. And if you set the penalty level too low, or you don't have a penalty, realization rates become very low. If you set them too high, we see that competition is hampered and also prices are going up. So there needs to be a balance, which is at the moment seems to be rather difficult to find. Then we also see that auction results are highly dependent on context factors, like the general attractiveness of renewables in the country, some other market conditions, for example, the existing supply chain and so on, and also on governance, like administrative or grid-related barriers. We'll talk much more about international experiences and all the empirical aspects at our 4th webinar in mid of January, so you're welcome to already sign up for that. To sum it up, we can say that we are actually first now really beginning to understand auctions for renewable support in Europe. Countries are still experimenting, gaining experience as they go along. It is rather too early to conclude on overall best practices, and we need more testing and evaluation of different schemes. And this is actually exactly what we are doing in the AURES project with our different approaches that I mentioned in the beginning. Some things are already clear. Auctions can only be successful with sufficient competition, inadequate balance of risk allocation, and also reliable processes of the auction. And there are going to be trade-offs between different policy goals, as you have seen in my small examples. And we also see that it is most likely that one size does not fit all, and auction design should be adjusted to specific market conditions. So you cannot just take one scheme and transfer it as it is to a whole different country and market. Yes, okay, so this is, was my presentation, a very fast run through of different topics. I hope that it could give you an overall overview of what renewable auctions are and why we're talking so much about them at the moment. And you're very welcome to participate in any of the next webinars that we're going to have. And I think now we have about 20 minutes for questions and discussion. So I think we're going to do it in that way that I can look into the chat and see what we have received. And then I'll just answer them. Okay. I cannot see. Okay, there is one. Okay, one question is about small-scale renewables and how can micro, small, or cooperative renewables be protected in an auction system? And in your opinion, the question is, in your opinion, do you think there should be a different system for prosumers? Okay, so let's. I would like to start by saying that we are going to have one webinar, which is only dealing with active diversity, and this is webinar number 7, which will take place in February, where we'll go into detail with how what design options are there to protect small actors in this. As I said in the beginning or during my presentation, member states are welcome to exempt all renewables below 1 megawatt from the auction, and this is probably a good idea also in terms of practicality for a house owner. PV installing some kilowatts is probably not feasible to participate in a national renewable auction. So of course these small installations below 1 megawatt are generally considered to be exempted from this auction scheme. Of course, for the a little bit larger installations who are to participate, or when countries choose that they should participate in the auctions, there are different ways on what could be done. For example, they could receive a bonus for their bid. You could also think about introducing a quota for smaller actors who should have access to a certain amount of the auction volume, and in this it is quite interesting to see how exactly do you define these small actors. Is it small actors you want to protect, or is it small installations you want to protect? There is also a difference. We will go into more detail. You could also think about designing dedicated auctions for only the small actors. So there are many different options, and I think it is up to the policymakers to decide if they want to protect the small actors or not. Then there is a question from Yirsi on diversity, asking, isn't it against European free market rules to put criteria on actors? I think we will have to, of course, look into that more and see if see on the concrete options and proposed design if that is a problem. But in general, there are a lot of exemptions and differentiation for SMEs in place in Europe, and this is certainly an option to do. Of course, it has to comply with the rules, and we are going to be very much aware of explaining how you can make these exemptions while complying with the rules. I hope that answers your question. Maybe also one more aspect which I haven't mentioned before is that we are, of course, looking into auctions as a rather established tool in many procurement processes. It is just very new for renewable support, and we will have a webinar, our webinar number 3, where we look only into what can we learn from other industries. Are there industry procurement auctions in other industries that are interesting, that have similar characteristics to renewables, and what can we learn from there? And we are so lucky that we have auction experts as part of our consortium, TACON, who have dealt with many different auctions in industries. For example, the sale of UMTS licenses, where we can draw from these international other industry experiences also. Okay. Are there any more questions? Okay, I think. Okay, so here is there a Q&A. The question is, could it not be argued that mature technologies can bid strategically in technology-neutral auctions, as they know less mature technologies will bid with higher prices, thus paying mature technologies more than needed and not developing new? Yes, there is of course always the issue with strategic bidding in auctions, and it is one crucial element in auction design always to avoid how we can avoid unwanted strategic behavior. Not all strategic behavior is necessarily a bad thing or hampers efficiency or support costs. But of course, in your question, if very mature, very cheap technologies know that, for example, the auction volume is so large that it cannot be filled by only the mature technologies, and they know that there are going to be some higher price immature technologies part of the winning team. Then, of course, they could strategically bid higher. A question is, of course, do we have a clearing price, one uniform price, or does each bidder receive their own bid? Of course, this will make a difference in the evaluation. If we have a clearing price, the different behavior will not change a lot in the auction outcome. If we have pay as bid, of course, the support cost will be increasing, but this might be a problem. We will have to see. I think we'll need to have a more, maybe a quantitative example on when this happens. What we've seen in the past in international auction schemes, for example, in the Netherlands, is that whenever there is technology neutrality, we also see that there is some kind of a banding where the cheapest technologies have a different price ceiling than the larger, the less mature technologies with a higher expected bidding price. So in this way, you can actually do some differentiation to avoid unwanted strategic behavior. Then there is a question on timing. Many projects might take years to develop and are delayed. Do the tenders put a specific deadline? What happens if the construction is delayed? Yes, there need to be a deadline for construction. This is what we usually call grace period in the design element. That means once the auction has a winner and there is an agreement made with the winning bidder, you will sign a contract that this specific plant has to be constructed within a certain time period. For example, I think in the German PV auctions, this has been 18 months, if I'm not very much mistaken. And within these 18 months, you have to produce the first power to the grid, and this then proves that you have installed. If you are delayed, usually. In order to ensure that these deadlines are kept, you can use penalties. And there are two types of these penalties. Either you can do either a non-compliance penalty applies, that when at the end of the 18 months and maybe some extended period when you have not built or constructed the project, then the non-compliance penalty will apply, and this is, and then the concession is going back to the auctioneer. And usually, in a lot of schemes, what happens then is that the auction, the amount that has been given